This video will cover how to get a dynamic string section patch with a sampler or a vintage synth like this SY99. I'll begin by showing how to dump samples into the SY99. If you want to skip ahead to the part where I talk about setting up the strings and the samples in a patch, the video has a timeline so you can get to the next section. Before I start, I'll compare the strings I played on the SY99 to the chamber strings of the Vienna Instruments.
This hand, this is your failure. Your bowing sucks.
The problem with the Vienna Instruments, there's a clarity but a lack of expression in this phrasing of the notes. The bowing sucks. When I recorded violinists from the Princeton Symphony, I would give them scores to look at before I would do any sampling. So there would be playing within a musical context. So I'll do a direct comparison between some of my samples and Vienna chamber strings. I noticed as I was playing that this E, the notes are bouncing between the left and right channels depending on how hard I hit the key. Which creates an artificial effect, because if a real string section, the violins, one note wouldn't be bouncing between the left and right channels. So when I was mastering the violins for my chamber strings, I made sure there was no issues like that. Because the Oberheim Matrix chamber violins use velocity layers as opposed to switching, there's a smooth transition between the sustained notes to staccato notes. Later in the video, I'll show how to use a sample of analog strings to add an intense vibrato to acoustic strings. So I'm going to show how to send this sample over to the SY99. See, the SY99 can receive samples over MIDI sample dump. This is a listing of different samplers that support MIDI dump, but there's actually newer models like the SY32 and the SY2000 that also do. So I'll go into Utility, and then go to MIDI, and then enter Settings. And what you need to do is to turn off the bulk protect off. You turn off bulk protect, and exit, then go into Sample, and then number 2 is Sample Dump. And then go into Sample, and then it shows the directory. Now, what's unusual about the SY99, I notice, is I'm using an EMU ESI2000 to send samples over. And sample number 1 on the ESI is sent to number 2 on the SY99. So there's always one sample later than what the numbers are on the ESI. So all I have to do now is, you don't even have to press request. I just can dump it over and it'll start to send it. Yeah, it's started from 1372, so it's sending all the packets correctly. So yeah, this is going to take a while, so I'll just skip to when the sample's loaded. The Vienna Rompler, that's what I call it, only has a simple attack, decay, and sustain release envelopes. The envelope rates of 2 and 3 of the SY99 have levels that can be altered, which made it possible to create a much more dynamic string sound that swells with like crescendos that I believe is simulating the effect of changing bow direction. So that effect would be impossible on the Vienna Rompler. Now I'll show you how to make a dynamic strings patch with 2 layers. First, you'll need a soft layer, a piano layer like this. And I'll admit it's going to be difficult. I haven't ever found any samples that have such good attack transits. But then you'll also need a second layer that's more forte. And this is the SY99's present strings 1. And I believe the SY77 must have the same samples, and they work actually pretty well. What you do is you have a layer of these 2 instruments mapped across the keyboard. And what you want to do is set the velocity sensitivity of the second layer to be more sensitive, like a higher setting, so when you play it, you first hear the soft layer. And you have to hit the keys harder to hear the second layer. And then next and this is actually the important part, is setting the envelopes. For the envelopes of the soft layer, I have it set with a long decay. I set level 3 to 0, so that way when you play a chord, or play, have an ending passage, it's a nice soft long ending. But for the second layer, I have it set up so there's a crescendo effect, that at rate 2, it drops, and then for rate 3, it raises again. So you can hear that. Which creates that, I think it's in the effect of changing bow direction. The SY99 strings 1 have a nice fast attack, but you can slow that down and have it controlled by velocity sensitivity. So I bring rate 1 down to around, like, say 25, 26, 25, and then go to the velocity sensitivity and bring this up to around 5 or 6. And then the amp mod sensing, this controls the envelope's sensitivity to the velocity up to 6. So that way it slows the attack down, and you can modulate between slow and faster attacks. And then when you play the notes softer, you hear my piano strings, but then it goes into the faster. And what I'm showing would work on other synths that can load samplers like the Akai S1000. And I should mention that the SY77 Sector 101 makes a card that you can load custom samples onto it. So what I'm showing here could be applied to that also. I noticed that factory string patches almost always have an even envelope like an organ, but string players don't play sustained notes like an organ. Analog synths like the Oberheim Matrix 12 are pretty good at simulating the sound of 20 violinists. So I'll show you how to layer a sample with the strings to give it a fatter sound. So I'm going to use this sample, and you can sample this if you don't have it. I'll just sustain it for a few seconds here. So you can sample that to use it, and then go into what you need is to have the ability of layering 3 sounds. So I created a third layer for those analog strings. And what I'll do to save time is this applies with some synths like the SY77 as well. I can copy the envelopes of the second layer, the forte layer, up and copy to element 3. So yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, I copied the strings. Now I got to select it back to the analog synth wave. That's it. And then what I've done is copied the envelopes of element 2 to element 3. So they'll play basically with a unison of the envelopes. Add some reverb. Yeah, so now when you play softly, you hear the soft strings. And then it goes into the intense vibrato when you hit the keys harder. Yeah, it sounds best if you have the slowest attack for the analog strings, so you have the attack transits of the acoustic strings, so it sounds more realistic. So if I slow it down a little, here it's a little too fast, but if I slow it down to like 18, you first hear the attacks of the acoustic strings, and then the analog gives it that intense vibrato that slowly fades in. Yeah, the methods I just showed, when they're applied to powerful samplers like this Emulator 4 and the S6000, they truly blow away the Vienna Instruments. So until next time, take care.